Hello, my friends. Russell Wright from curationprofits.com, networkempire.com, and I'm the co-inventor of the Theme Zoom natural language processing and semantic analysis vertical research tool. Today we're going to talk about what was 8 steps to real-world curation. This is an article by Guillaume of scoop.it or Scoop It. It's a curation platform. It is by far my favorite curation platform for too many reasons to mention, and they're very technical reasons. But we're going to get into that a little bit. We're going to go ahead and change the name of this presentation. Rather than stealing his article, we're going to call this 12 Steps to Real-World Curation, so that I can add my own value to what it is that's being said, express maybe some differences on some minor points, but also support Guillaume in what he's actually saying. And again, this is borrowed from Guillaume, who is the CEO of scoop.it. Let me go ahead and just open up and the origin of this article was actually scooped out of a Quora presentation that he provided on Quora.com. If you're not familiar with how to use Quora to drive massive traffic to your site, do feel free to visit networkempire.com, where we talk about Quora inception, how it can be used to provide immense value to your community while at the same time driving traffic and ultimately conversion. So we're going to call this 12 Steps to Real-World Creation. And the original article that he had was, what are some real-world best practices in terms of business using content curation? You should read that article for yourself. I've actually got a link to that article here, and I always upload my presentations, which is in the Brain format from thebrain.com, with the links active so that you can actually go and look at some of these articles. Okay, let's move on to point 1. Point 1 in Guillaume's article was define your topic or your audience. I couldn't agree more with this. It's so incredibly important. We're going to get into some. I'm actually more radical about this than most, because after teaching literally probably thousands of students over the last 5 years, both for developing their online business as well as online coaching and online mentoring, and actually starting several businesses of my own, the biggest problem that we find is what we call learning targets. People forget what they're selling and what they're doing. And you got to know the difference between direct selling and indirect selling. What are you selling? It's so incredibly important to remember that. Now, in sales and marketing, you learn this really well. You learn that there's always a back end. Whether you're using a product ascension model or a client ascension model, you really need to be aware and not forget what the learning target and the sales target actually is. Okay, make sure that you know the difference between direct selling and indirect selling, and make sure that your product or services are congruent with the audience in the market. Now, what he's talking about here is to find your target market. Okay, let me go back to that. He's really making sure that who you're speaking to, and it's really obvious in scoop.it or any other curation platforms that are using. If you're curating a lot of context across a lot of pieces of content across a lot of different topics, and they're not congruent, you're going to get a diverse number of audience members, and they're not necessarily going to be focused around the topic or theme. So really pick your topic or your theme or your magazine very clearly. For example, let's take a look at Guillaume's magazine here. He really clearly lays out what he's talking about here. This magazine, he has several different magazines. You can actually go on his main page and you can check to see all the different magazines. You wouldn't mix free ride skiing with curation in the future. You wouldn't mix what's SFI's favorite with Warcraft, World of Warcraft or whatever. So keep your themes and clusters. I know that seems obvious, but I feel that this is very deeply under-optimized, and people don't do their keyword research or their theme clustering research, which is basically the tools that I designed to help them do. You would actually be able to get a massive return on investment. In fact, we have by researching the Scoop It pages before we build them, as well as our own blog pages as well. So understand the difference between direct selling and indirect selling. Curation is all about indirect selling, and some curators would actually argue that it's not about selling at all. This is nonsense, and this is a bold-faced lie or just a huge amount of ignorance in the relationship of how a business model, or what we call IT debt, relates to how the thing is funded. And we're going to talk about librarians versus curators. We talk about librarians versus staff members. So when I say staff members, I mean people who work for your company. Somebody's paying them. So follow the money, follow the IT debt, and follow the staffing debt. Number 2 in Guillaume's article, to start from what you already do and define your format. Okay. He says nobody has a lot of time on their hands to engage in new activities. The secret is to make it at marginal cost. I found most professionals do at least one of 4 of these things. Exactly. But the thing is people are already curating whether they know it or not, and that's what he's saying here. Chances are you're already content curating. Your inbox, your email inbox, is one of the biggest, luscious, profitable sources of curation out there. I remember I designed a software that was designed to forward spam mail that I got from ClickBank offers directly to a curation platform just so they would get indexed by the search engine. Okay, that's not exactly curation, but it's topical curation if I'm keeping them organized in a particular way and adding an affiliate link to them and keeping them contextual. That's a form of curation. Okay, I call that spam curation. Okay, we've been doing all kinds of curation for many years. Another reason that you want to start from where you already, what you already do, is you will have more context and expertise just in general. Even if you're not an expert, you're going to have more relational context of how things can get laid out. Okay, because value is likely to be added if you know something or have at least a little bit of context for new ideas. This is why generally when I'm helping people start their own business, I actually do have them move towards the thing they enjoy. Okay, and there's a lot of mentors out there who will say, don't curate, don't start a business. It doesn't matter if you like what you're doing with the business. If it doesn't make any money, that's not good. Well, that's a publishing model versus a passion model, and it really, really does depend. I'm finding curators who fail online hate what they're curating. Curators that are succeeding are passionate about what they're doing. They're already organizing it. They're already getting content, and then they're able to drive that into locations like Scoop, like we're looking at here, like scoop.it, where what they're already interested in kind of is getting republished. Now, whether or not they have enough money to make enough sense to make money out of that is what we're going to talk about next, okay, in the next few numbers. Number 3 is organize your source. Okay, organize your source is really what we're looking at is like making sure that you know where the sources are coming from. I have found that I'm far more successful when I'm keeping track of the sources of the information in the form of people than I am in the form of libraries. Books are alive, and as soon as you bring them alive, you bring them closer to the social web. So I like to speak about authors and give them personal kudos and talk about their books after I talk about what made them write them. I'm very passionate about this new human web, which is really organized by people. I seem to have more success when I organize the sources based on people rather than on inanimate objects, which is essentially books. What are you selling? Again, you're going to find that what are you selling, for me, be indirect or direct, is the number one thing that will connect all of the pins on this particular brain, because this is what people forget. Again and again, I find people getting caught up in curating for the sake of curating for the sake of curating. That's almost like marketing for the sake of marketing. Some marketers can do really well marketing, but most of them fail. That's because they're not an expert. They're just copying other people. Same with curation. You're supposed to add meaning or context, and we're going to talk more about that. So if you're going to, again, organize your sources, don't start a hobby, okay, unless you want to start a hobby. But the problem is a lot of people who think they're getting into business are actually starting hobbies, and you need to be aware of that. Curation is a prime example of that. I have a friend who curates hours per day on something that there is no golden frame. There is no target or back end or product that he can drive even indirectly those sales to, or those relationships, or his community buzz. Okay, it's just nuts, and you'll find a lot of that nonsense in curation. Okay, don't become a librarian. Okay, unless you're getting paid to be a librarian. Follow the money. Now, if you're a smart curator, get really good at what you're doing. Arm yourself, sharpen your knife, and your organizational skills, and go out there and get a job doing it. Okay, especially if you don't have products and services and you're not an online marketer, because what's going to happen is you're going to go broke. There's a lot of curators I know that haven't made a dime because they're listening to all the curators out there who are saying curation has very little to do with SEO and so on and so forth, which is so much nonsense that I can't even begin to confront it within this conversation. Okay, you need to know both, and that's what's so intense about this, the cybernetic web. The cybernetic web is a universe, a virtual world that's made both for machines and humans equally. And so you do need to have both, and that's what curators don't like to hear. They don't like to hear that you got to know everything. The global IQ is growing because you have to know how to curate sources and organize your sources while at the same time communicating socially with online etiquette through those sources. Okay, filter ruthlessly, number 4. Okay, of this article. Now, here's an article that I wrote called "Acceptance for Cognitive Value." It was really a very useful. Let me just open it here for you. it was a very useful exercise. I pulled this from the libertarian acceptance for value concept on Black's Law. This is legal jargon, Black's Law Dictionary. The acceptance or taking or receiving anything that is good as in part. We live in a world where context is everything. And the reason this quote is important is because there's David Allen, who's one of my favorite mentors and teachers that I've had through the years on how to organize, how to actually get things done, how to execute flawlessly. He said, there is no such thing as information overload. There is such a thing as potential meaning overload. Okay. It's not that you're drowning in too much information. It's that you're trying to derive the meaning of that information. You're trying to unbury the lead. That's what journalists have gotten paid for the last 20 years. And now they're having a hard time because everybody finds themselves adding spin, adding buzz with every headline they write on their blog. Okay. So the whole point is that meaning curation is the real kind of curation that we're talking about. It's really not information or content curation. It's meaning curation that people really want. And that's very difficult. So I wrote this article called Acceptance for Cognitive Value, where you can learn about some of the neurosciences work in this contextual blindness, contextual learning, and value distraction, specifically the Neuropolicy Institute at Emory University. Do feel free to visit my wiki at themezoom-neuroeconomics, Acceptance for Cognitive Value. Meaning making is the new curation online. And you got to filter for that. I have actually got a full-time job just educating my students at Curation Profits on what meaning curation actually is, and it's changing every day. Okay. Add your point of view. Again, the Scoop It CEO's article number 6. Add your point of view. Made to stick. Success model. There's an amazing book, probably the most important book for me, written in the last 2 or 3 years, easy to understand, called Made to Stick by the Heath brothers. Buy it. Read it and understand simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional, and story. Put these together and you're going to have an amazing amount of value added to any story that you ever curate, every opinion that you ever spin. And everybody is adding their own influence and opinion, no matter how hard they try. There's no truly objective observer. Okay, even scientists are not objective. So you have to realize and utilize that. What are you selling? Again, what's the back end? What's the purpose of this? Are you hiring librarians or salesmen? And the answer of that should be yes, because they're actually merging together in one construct. And that's where it gets really, really weird and really, really interesting when it comes to content creation online. Okay, so you got to know your persona. Okay, you can learn a ton about persona creation with Mark Hardy. Every writer, even if they're writing a book for Amazon, it has a particular persona or position that they're taking. Every CEO now has to have their persona really well formulated because they're going to get exposed somewhere within the curation process. When you're doing brand curation, you have to take a stance, even if it's on the About Us page of your library. Okay, curation rooms are probably going to rival PR rooms or press rooms within the next 2 or 3 years. You're going to have to do a little bit of both. You're going to have to know the kind of content that's coming through there. You're going to have to know the difference between real-time news curation, blog curation, RSS curation, video curation, and meaning curation. And all of those are not necessarily the same thing. Okay, so let's go back and look at where we were here. Okay, find your persona. What are you selling? Again, this can be linked to every step. Number 6 of Scoop.it's article is use an integrated curation hub model to share across channels, get SEO traffic, all of that to your website. I was pleased to see that he actually added this because it's very important to us. Here's a model created by my software architect, Sue Bell, CEO of Themes, acting CEO now of themezoom.com, where we talk about our one web ring to rule them all, the context of layers of an onion in which the web processes the cybernetic layers of the web. Cybernetics means human fused with machine. Not necessarily a Borg, like Borg in Star Trek, not necessarily nanotechnology that's changing your physical features. We're talking cybernetics in terms of the virtual space that is driving the web. Okay, so when he talks about the curation hub model, we're really looking at making sure there's so many different kinds of hub models that you actually understand that this is where we find people falling down the most. Their curators are coming online that know nothing about SEO, and SEO is coming online that's very, very skewed to making money with SEO without considering the human ramifications, and that's still out there. We cover this in length at our website with a flash presentation called onewebringtorulethem.com. And feel free to visit that slide presentation where I review a little bit of the layers of the web rings that we're covering here and how you can think about how to think when it comes to your different target market. The bottom line is this: what are you selling? Don't get me started on this topic. Are you hiring librarians or salesmen or both? Well, you better be hiring both, or you better be hiring writers that understand both the learning and the sales target of your organization, as well as the brand topics that are useful driving traffic. Okay, it's a very, very huge challenge to the industry right now. And curators really don't get it, especially curators that have no experience in sales. And I'm really tired of hearing about curators who are saying that content curation and real-time news curation is the greatest thing since sliced bread, when they don't have a strategy to drive the traffic inwards, following PageRank and traditional SEO values and traditional conversion values. And that's where it's great because, again, Scoop.it's fantastic article on this, he's talking about Google Analytics, enterprise. He's talking about analytics of any kind. It doesn't have to be Google. This is the easiest for people to get started with, and that's what you need. You've got to start measuring. Scoop.it has a fantastic integration of Google Analytics, and also the traffic that we got off of Scoop.it is fantastic, okay, depending upon what way we're using it for. Again, what are you selling? Be direct or indirect. When you're curating, you want to think more in terms of indirect selling. Okay, you don't want to directly pitch. It's not shameless promotion. You can say curated by such and such organization. Okay, you can also look up my talk online about, just type in enterprise versus small business content curation, and you'll see a lot of stuff on there about this. Okay, people get confused about how much money they should spend to buy. Okay, what is your IT debt? Okay, librarians generally have to get paid by the state or the feds. Okay, and if you want to be a curator, you have to be an expert or a pseudo-expert in a topic, at least know your technical prowess, know how to work your way around these different curation platforms. You can actually go to a company with a resume on that, and then you can get paid. You get paid to do what you love to do. It's possible. Okay, we'll talk more about that on another video. And we also talk about it at curationprofits.com. So measure, that's the key point here. The eighth point in Scoop.it's 8-point step is build a community of interest. I hope that's obvious to you. What makes Scoop.it very powerful is that the way that he's organized the traffic around the site allows people and encourages people to share each other's content. Now, I'm going to be careful what I say here because community building is really tricky. And at the end of the day, the platform that owns your content and that you're a part of, that you do not own the server, owns you. And that goes for Scoop.it, that goes for Facebook, that goes for Pinterest. At the end of the day, you need to learn to have your own golden frame. I talk about this really prolifically at Curation Profits. Curation Profits is not about content curation, it's about premium content curation. It's about driving you to owning the platforms that should exist in your WR1 and your your WR1. WR2, it's fine if other platforms like Scoop.it and Paper.li, any of these other secondary platforms, that if they disappear tomorrow and they have a liquidity event, we're going to get into this here in a second. Okay, so build a community. And when you're building a community, target addictive, neurotic, irrational pains. My friend Eben Pagan talked a lot about this in his early years and drove Sue Bell and myself to write a book called The $4 Million Niche Market Research Questions. And it's a really good book. I do suggest you just pick it up, or you can view the video that we have on it. Okay, and that will be with this presentation if you want to get a little insight in how that goes. Okay, now here's where we leave Scoop.it's article on Quora behind and move to our added value. We're going to give you a few more and move beyond the 8 to 12. That's why we're calling it the 12 steps. Okay, 9, golden frame. I've already talked about this. You're going to hear this constantly because I'm really in pain when my students are in pain. When they're working out here on the WR2 and the WRS2 sites and they're not driving to their product or service. They're librarians and they're behaving like librarians. They're not in business. They have a hobby and they don't know it. What is your golden frame? What are you selling? Even if it's a members area. Okay? Is any of the content sitting on your own platforms? Is it converting to sales? Yeah, what do we mean by the golden frame? Okay? Let's look at the golden frame. Here's our article, the ThemeZoom-Neuroeconomics, also ThemeZoomGlossary.com will take you there as well. Sorry for the hard word. Golden frame is just really simple. Like, how are you monetizing that, right? It's not complicated. This is my own website or one of my many, many websites, and here's a banner that takes them to an actual piece of paid content, a paid content members area. Hey, a membership site is a product, right? Well, your golden frame is generally the most under-optimized part of someone's online strategy. And this is why, again, we need you to learn this functionality, the hub system process, because even if you're not using ours, it's a whole can of worms that you can open. Everybody has their idea, everything from link wheels to three-way linking. That's where you get into SEO and all the hubbub around it. Well, we're experts at that, and we've been around since the beginning with that, and we do avid testing all the time. So I can tell you what works and doesn't work, and this is what we teach at networkempire.com in the members area. Main thing is, like, what's the IT debt? Are you hosting stuff? Do you own your own software platforms? And if your curation platform, including Scoopit, or anything else goes liquid, that is, they go through a liquidity event tomorrow morning, do you still have all your content backed up? How are you going to do with that? Do you have ways to back all this up? Okay, do you own the platform in which the content rests? Okay, Facebook, they have disclaimers that say they own the images and photographs that you upload. You're kind of screwed if you ever want it back or your account ever gets deleted, even by accident. Okay, well, think about that. You don't want to sit on platforms unless they're able to take it to your own server, either in your organization if you're a corporation, or in your own living room. I mean, I don't care, or your own hosting company. Data loss, you're just taking too many risks if you have all of your content on third-party sites, okay? I'm going to add another, number 10, to Scoopit's article. Megamind. I don't know if you saw the movie. I think it's Walt Disney. It was very funny. But in one of the scenes, he says something like, the difference between a villain and a supervillain? Presentation. Take, for example, the presentation that I'm giving you right now. It's probably giving some people a headache, but the statistics on this are that people stay with me longer in the video. You can look through my YouTube presentations. And I can look at my YouTube analytics. The taper off is far less when I'm using an engaging medium. Part of that's due to the fact that they're wondering, well, what is this weird presentation, this neural network software he's using? The other part is that the brain is partial to seeing things spread out and connections. Believe it or not, your brain is wired with neural networks. It's connected across a myriad of networks, almost like a mycelial network. And because it gives you an overview or a zoom out of a visual, you're going to be attracted to that. Nature and evolution has rewarded you for thousands of years of looking at things as they're spread out. So this is why infographics and all these other things are so popular. Okay, a video sales letter is another example of that. When people create slideshows, you're giving them a quick overview, you're telling a story, and the brain likes stories. And that's all part of the made-to-stick concept that I showed you later. This is a brain software that I use, but there's all kinds of software like this even for free. You can use mind maps. If you give a quick mind map and you don't confuse people and you try to stay to the point and you show a real solid relationship and a conclusion, you're going to really help people, and they're going to stay with you, and they're going to reward you by going to your site and back engineering and buying your products and services so they can back engineer what you're doing to create their own version of it. Notice that I am curating here. It's just done probably way differently than you've ever seen. And I'm using Scoopit's own article and adding value and just expanding upon the idea. Number 11, I want you to clean your room. This is probably the biggest thing that I have to offer. Okay? Curate your own organization's material first. Now, this is a really amazing thing because I read a great article by a multimillionaire CEO, and he said, most CEOs find it easier to discover what is happening in the world outside than they have locating data and new content in their own company or even old content. Okay, I cannot tell you how true this is. I run an organization with huge amounts of fantastic content that gets buried, some of it never even published, and yet I find people on staff believing that they need to go out and write to the Times. So really, and I haven't written this down here, I really need to understand the difference between evergreen content and real-time news curation. Find an equal balance and a return on investment of writing content that is addressing the times and the trends, and press releases that are addressing the times and the trends, and content that is evergreen, and separate those out. And then when you write evergreen content, curate your evergreen content on what I call your rapid publishing networks or your dynamic content. Okay, so that's really, really important. In fact, I would even go far as to say use 2 separate Scoopit accounts or more, have multiple purposes. Make sure that you keep the content that you're using to organize. I have a Scoopit account that only organizes content within my own organization. Gets not huge amounts of traffic right now, but it gets enough to where, because it's so effortless, that it really does help. And it really does, the page rank alone that gets passed from SEO perspective, from Scoopit to some of my other sites really has made a huge difference compared to other sites. Okay, so clean your room. And finally, number 12, content curation, social media, and indirect sales. Okay, this is the thing, this is my pet peeve about the curation industry at large and the buzz, okay? Thought leadership is contextual sales, okay? It's also indirect sales. Just remember that you have to be a thought leader if you're really going to drive novelty, if you're going to really create meaning for your audience. Remember David Allen, my hero, one of my friends and mentors, David Allen. Okay, there's no such thing as information overload. There was only such a thing as meaning, potential meaning. Not meaning, but potential meaning overload. That means your job is to unbury the lead. You're essentially a journalist, a writer, a storyteller, and a made-to-stick executor and conversion expert all in one. What's really happening is we're moving into a new world of leadership. Well, thought leadership and regular leadership is becoming one. When you look at the debates that we have happening in Washington and the kind of modalities that we have, you can get away with leadership in the form of just being compelling looking and having pathological certainty, that is just simply appearing more certain than the other opponent, even if you're not accurate. The future of leadership is actually going to be a merger between context and data analysis, similar to the data that I'm showing you here. You're not going to be able to get up in front of a national audience and argue how great you are to be the next president without actually showing data. In other words, visual certainty and visual tells are not going to be enough for future generations. We're just going to roll our eyes. My kids and your kids are going to roll their eyes and say, show me the money. Show me the details. Show me the math. Let's be rational here. It's not just about certainty. So Donald Trump used to say, leadership is sales. I agree. But leadership is changing to become thought leadership. And thought leadership is not always congruent with plain old-fashioned, macho leadership. Okay, he who has the biggest chin wins. What we're seeing is a movement into the merger between a librarian, a salesman, and a knowledge worker. Okay, and what you're going to see is an understanding of what indirect sales is all about. And this new world of data and digital information is going to help corporations and companies, first of all, organize their own content better and promote the content that they already have better, because ultimately the membrane between your own internal content and your organizations and your marketing content is going to become thinner and thinner. So do you pay a salesman or a librarian in your organization? And yes. Make sure that your librarians study sales. Make sure that your salesmen study librarian curation, specifically. When I say curation, librarian here, I mean curation. Okay? Remember, always remember your selling target or your back end. What are you selling? It's all indirect sales. Keep track of your IT debt. Okay? This has been a study on Scoopit's article, what are some of the real-world best practices in terms of business using content creation. We are curationprofits.com and networkempire.com. Please do visit us. We look forward to seeing you on the inside.